Welcome to the Rise Together podcast weekly hot take series. Every week, we're going to bring you powerful stories and strategies from leaders who are making a real impact by building stronger, more resilient communities. Get ready to be inspired, motivated, and equipped with the tools to thrive in both your personal and professional life.
Hi, everybody. This is Beth Almaris with the Foundation for Family and Community Healing. Our organization is a nonprofit, and we really specialize in helping individuals and organizations build strength and resilience through skill-based education. I'm really excited to talk to my guest today, Jeff Naftal, who is an HR consultant, and he has a lot of years of experience and is going to share some of that with us here today. How you doing, Jeff?
Very good. How are you?
I am good. It's good to see you. All right, so I know folks are going to enjoy this conversation, so let's just jump in. So you've been in the HR space for a while. What originally attracted you to working in human resources?
So originally I got in by kind of accident. I worked for local governments and a lot of them were very small and had no human resources. And I kind of gravitated to it. Over the years of local government management, I did more and more HR and eventually decided that rather than answering to 5 or 7 council members, I liked HR a lot better. And so I kind of left local government management and focused entirely on HR, which is what I do now.
Yeah, great. And so how have you seen human resources change over the years?
Went from a heavily paper type of operation to a much more technologically advanced operation. It's gone from what we used to call the policy police to more of a employee well-being and employee satisfaction and engagement kind of thing that we try and do. There's still some policy policing that needs to be done. You can't have people violating the law or internal policies, but a lot of what we do now is related to making sure that employees stay engaged and stay with us, the good ones, we want them to stay.
So what are some examples of how organizations are doing just that?
Some organizations, there was a period where, ping pong tables and lunch spreads and things like that were the way that companies thought that they could keep their employees happy. It is definitely not, a monetary thing for the most part. And so your best organizations these days are doing it because they recognize that career development is important to everybody and not just at the lowest levels, even at the highest levels, career development is important. They recognize that people leave an organization because of their managers, and so making sure we have leadership training and leadership that actually understands what they're supposed to do and how to do it. And those kinds of things then help you keep your turnover down, your good employees retained, and allow you to actually identify those people that shouldn't be retained and need to go.
Yeah. That's really interesting that managers are a big cause of why people leave. I've been to that movie over the years.
I think everybody has at some point.
Yeah.
Become a manager, like, oh my God, I don't want to work for that person ever again.
It's really interesting because, I think so many people end up in management positions just through they've been there for a long time, or perhaps they're a subject matter expert, but it doesn't mean that they have the skills and or the personality to really be a good high quality manager.
And that's why good leadership training, but also good succession planning allows you to avoid that. And so many times frontline managers in particular, the ones that are the most important in an organization, are the ones that got up there because they had good skills but no preparation for leading, and then they get put in a leadership position and they're lost, they're floundering.
Yeah, very much so. What do you think are some of the challenges facing organizations from an HR perspective right now?
So that so I work in a lot of nonprofits and have local governments really are a nonprofit too, and so this is kind of my bread and butter. Um, and with the current situation in Washington and the things that are going on, how to fund the things that you do as a nonprofit. Your goal is not to get rich. Your goal is to help people in some fashion or another, depending on your organization. And finances are really tight. And so, how do you get things done that you need to get done, that you want to get done, when income revenue maybe is stagnant? Um, Membership associations have to convince people of their profession to join because otherwise you get no revenue from new members. If you're in an association that I have a friend that's in an association that deals with solar power, and now they have to worry about an entire spin on what was important, what was getting money, what was generating interest is now on the downside because of the way the government is turned. So these kinds of things really impact what we do and how we do it. And we have to be so when we do human resources, we try and be strategic, and we try and not only be strategic from an HR perspective, but how does our HR strategy fit with the overall strategy of the organization? Well, if the overall strategy of the organization is in flux because of things going on beyond the organization's control, HR has to adjust on the fly to that and may not be able to keep doing the strategy things that they had in mind. So just it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. Um, how do you feel about? I think there's a big push for, we had kind of gone to this hybrid work culture due to COVID. And some of us, like I've been lucky enough to be a hybrid employee for over 20 years now. And now, at least I live in DC, at least here we're seeing a big push to go back into the office 5 days a week. And um, it's a real struggle for people, and and they're fighting back against it. What's your take on that?
So having a family or son, wife, and son, I see the advantages to being home sometimes, right? I can leave work at 3:30 and go pick them up at school, right? And I can do those kinds of things. On the other hand, there's a certain benefit to that break between home and work. And so when I hop on the train, I also am in the DC area, Rockville, Maryland. And when I hop on the train down to DC, it's a 20-minute break from the home to go to work. And then later on in the afternoon, it's another 20-minute break from work back to home. It allows me to do that transition as opposed to when you're at home, work happens, life happens, everything's happening. I very much believe that personal interactions make a difference, and you can't really have them in a Zoom call. You just can't. Um, Interviewing, for example, there are things that you can see on the person you're interviewing, the physical characteristics that you can't see in a Zoom call. And one of the things I try and get hiring managers to do is not intimidate the person they're interviewing, but you don't know if you're intimidating them on a Zoom call most of the time. You can't tell. But if you're in a person with them, you can see the feet tapping and the nervousness going on. You can tone it back and help those people have a better interview. Collaboration at the water cooler may not be everything people say it is, but there's some value to those conversations that you don't have on Zoom. I can't be calling my supervisor up every 15 minutes on a Teams call in order to chat about something. It doesn't work that way. So then you end up with scheduled calls. So I see both sides. I'm kind of the opinion that probably 2 days a week in the office makes some sense. Then the other 3 days a week at home. And then as long as those days are flexible. So this week I need Wednesday at home. And the next week I need Thursday at home. As long as you've got some flexibility there, I can see the value to that kind of arrangement.
Yeah. Well, I definitely see the value in terms of work-life balance, right? Like yeah. So I think it is one of those things that hopefully, um, I know at least here in DC, it's swinging back hard the other way, but hopefully we'll end up in the middle, which is that 2 to 3 days a week.
And usually we see that in human resources, that things swing hard one direction, then they swing hard the other direction, and eventually the pendulum stops in the middle somewhere and you're good. So.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you think are some of the trends coming in HR?
So there's been an increasing and probably will continue to be an increasing amount of focus on employee wellness, not just engagement, but um, people have financial issues, people have health issues, people have personal issues that they don't really talk about, but us being able to provide them with outlets for that is helping to retain good employees and not lose them to things that are really not work related or in work control particularly, but you don't want to lose them for those things. I think technology is advancing. AI, I belong to SHRM, the national organization. They're very focused on AI and its implications for human resources. Um, I believe that confined AI systems are good, meaning that the data is restricted to the things you want in that data. I think some of the open systems where they can pull in misinformation and stuff, I'm not real crazy about. But
Interesting.
yeah, but I know AI is used in recruiting heavily at this point because it helps you to weed through 100 applicants for a role, especially if you design your applicant tracking system properly. You can really make good use of something like that as opposed to taking the time. The old days, you just have to go through resume by resume by resume. So there's, I think, technological changes that are coming that are going to make things better. Some of the, I'll call them chat bots for lack of a better term, that allow communication between employees and getting information without having to wait for somebody in HR to return their call. I think those things are going to be beneficial to employees everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as someone who works in HR and there's a lot of professional development and personal development, what are some topics that you're really interested in seeing organizations work on?
I I think that most organizations do not spend enough time on leadership development. I think that they don't do succession planning at all. I've had 4 organizations in a row now that talk a good game about wanting succession planning and never hit it. Um, I think that leadership development, we talked earlier about first line managers. It is to me incredibly wasteful to promote somebody to a management position who hasn't been given the skills they need to be successful at that position. And what happens then is either they fail and they're out, or they annoy the staff underneath them because they don't know how to manage them and those staff leave, or all of the above. And then you're really messed up because you've lost an entire department because you didn't bother training somebody in the first place. Um, I, I um, my last permanent stop, we put in LinkedIn Learning for everybody. So basically, it was like they had a LinkedIn Learning account. They got access to all 10,000 plus learnings that LinkedIn provides. And we pushed out once a month learning to people just because you should get some learning. And we had, arguments with supervisors because 1 hour a month was too much. We don't have time. And we do the math, if it's 7.5 hour a day, and you know, if you're looking at 75 hours every 2 weeks, 150 hours a month, taking 1 hour out of your 150 to learn something is not a burden, and it should be,
Right.
right? And so we need more organizations to provide that skill development, and then we need more managers to want to accept that skill development. If you don't know everything, let's get you some additional learning.
Well, this has been really great, Jeff. Where can folks find you if they're interested in learning more?
The easiest way is LinkedIn. I'm on there and I post stuff and happy to connect with anybody that wants to connect. I do have a website, supportforhr.com, but it's mainly for consulting gigs, and so I'm happy to provide thoughts and information and help people. I do resume reviews and things like that as well. So
Great. Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really enjoyed it. And thank you to our listeners.
Thank you for joining us today on our Rise Together podcast weekly hot take series. We hope you've been inspired by today's stories and strategies for building stronger, more resilient communities. Remember, resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about growing through every challenge to become bigger and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with somebody who could benefit from these insights. Stay connected, stay resilient, and we'll see you next time.